In this video, part 3 of the Supervisor Training Series, we will explain how supervisors reassign and approve or reject interviews. Once data collection has started, along with managing the assignments, the supervisor must also monitor the status of the survey and the quality of the data that was collected. After an interviewer synchronizes his or her tablet, or after an interview was started in web interview mode, the data in the completed interviews is transmitted to the server. This data in the completed interviews are immediately available for review under the Interviews tab. Clicking on the Interviews tab at the top of the screen will show a detailed list of interviews. The number in the parentheses next to interviews at the top of the table shows the number of interviews that are synchronized and have not yet been approved or rejected. The list of interviews displays the following information. The first column shows the interview key, which is a system-generated unique identifying number for each interview. This interview key is useful when referring to the interview when talking with other survey staff. The second column shows the identifying information for the interview. The responsible column identifies the interviewer that was assigned the interview. For example, if an interview has a completed status, the person in the responsible column will be the interviewer that conducted the interview. The last updated column displays the last date and time when an action was taken on the interview. The errors column indicates the number of questions in the interview that have an error. The status column shows the current status of the interview. Survey Solutions tracks the actions that are performed at interviews, so the status of the interview will most likely change during the course of the survey. The Received by Interviewer column indicates whether an interview was ever received by the interviewer on his or her tablet. This status determines what actions you as a supervisor can take when managing the interview. The last column, Assignment, shows the number of the assignment from which the interview was created. Located on the panel on the left side of the screen are some filters to help the supervisor find interviews faster. The list of interviews can be filtered by the name of the questionnaire, the assignment status, team member responsible, and or assignment number. Also, you can search for an interview by the information in the identifying question using the search bar at the top right corner of the screen. You can reassign, approve, or reject an interview by selecting the checkbox at the leftmost column next to the interview key. Then a bar will appear at the bottom of the screen with the buttons for Assign, Approve, or Reject. Certain actions are not allowed for some interview statuses. If that is the case, a pop-up window will appear that will tell you that the action was not allowed for that status. Clicking on the interview key of an interview will bring up a menu that will allow the supervisor to open the interview for further review, show the history of status changes, open the responsible person's profile, reassign the interview, and accept or reject the interview. To find completed interviews for review, use the drop-down menu on the left-hand side of the screen to filter the status to completed. Review individual questionnaires by clicking on the interview key and selecting Open in the drop-down menu that appears. Notice that the user interface with interview details matches the interviewer application. To make interview content clear, the interview details views displays questions and their answers similar to how it appears on the interview application. This is so headquarters and supervisors users can see what interviewers see. The top panel contains the main information about the interview, such as interview key, assignment number, questionnaire title, the interviewer that was responsible for the interview, supervisor's name, current status of the interview, and the date when the interview was last updated. Clicking on the Show Status History will bring up a log of the interview status changes that starts from the date that the assignment was created. On the right side of this panel are buttons where you can change the language and approve or reject the interview. To navigate through the questionnaire content, use the navigation pane in the middle of the screen that lists the sections and subsections in the questionnaire. The different colors will indicate completion status of sections similar to the interviewer application. Click on the plus sign to the left of a section, subsection, or roster to expand the elements to navigate directly to an item in that section, subsection, or roster. The filter feature can be used to see questions that have certain attributes. The with comments and flagged filters displays those questions with comments or flags, respectively. The invalid filter displays those questions that did not pass a validation condition. The valid filter displays questions that did not trigger a validation condition. The answered questions are all the questions that have an answer. The not answered questions are those that do not have an answer. The for supervisor filter shows questions that only the supervisor can see and are responsible for answering. The for interviewer filter shows all the questions that the interviewers are supposed to fill out. This will be a majority of the questions. You can select more than one filter. The number in the parentheses next to each filter indicates how many questions in the interview for which that filter applies. Clicking on a filter will show a list of the filtered questions on the right. For example, if you select the invalid filter, then you will see all the questions in the interview for which there is an error. Clicking on the question in the right pane will take you to the question of interest. To reset all the filters and see all the questions in the interview, click on the Reset All Filters link below all the filters or by pressing the X button on the top right panel with the found items. Add a flag. The supervisor will have to review large amounts of information in each questionnaire. Flags will let the supervisor mark questions that would need to be reviewed again. For example, when comparing the consistency of an answer in an earlier module of the questionnaire with an answer in a much later module. To add a flag, navigate to the question where you want to leave a flag and move your cursor to the top left-hand side of the screen where there is a gray flag icon. Then, click on the flag icon. The flag icon will turn red to indicate the flag has been added to this question. To see all the questions that have been flagged, the supervisor can click on the Flagged filter on the Filters panel on the left. Add comments. Comments left by the interviewer will appear in pink text. The supervisor can leave a comment for any question for the interviewer. To leave a comment, click on the gray 3 dots at the top right corner of the question of interest and then select Add a comment. A box at the bottom of the question will then appear. The supervisor can type in a comment for this interviewer in the box. After the supervisor finishes typing the comment, the supervisor can either press the Enter key on the keyboard or click on the Post button to add the comment. Multiple comments can be added to a question. After they have been added, comments cannot be deleted. Approve or reject. After reviewing the questionnaire, the supervisor should approve or reject the interview based on the quality of the data collected by the interviewer. Use the Approve and Reject buttons on the top pane to approve an interview and send it to headquarters, or to reject an interview with too many issues so that it can be returned to the interviewer for correction. Your job as a supervisor is to guarantee the quality of work that your interviewers produce, so approval and rejection of interviews should be performed with great care. When the supervisor pushes the Approve or Reject button, a confirmation screen will appear with the opportunity to provide a comment on the interview as a whole. When rejecting an interview, be sure to include a comment to clearly explain the reason for the rejection. The rejected case and the supervisor's comments are then returned to the interviewer. If you approve, then it is up to headquarters to approve or reject the interview. Click on the blue OK button to confirm your approval or rejection. Click on the Cancel button to go back to the interview details screen. Be sure of your decision before proceeding with approving or rejecting an interview. There is no way to unapprove or unreject the questionnaire unless it is rejected by headquarters. Reassigning an interview. You may need to reassign an interview in the future because of an interviewer's performance issue, illness, and management of the team's workload. For example, moving an interview to another interviewer on the team when the responsible interviewer cannot complete or revise it after rejection for some reason. The protocol for reassignment of interviews may vary depending on the interview status. There are 3 possible scenarios. 1. To reassign an interview that has not yet been synchronized with the interviewer's tablet, select the interview that needs to be reassigned and press the Assign button on the bottom of the screen. Then, type or choose from the drop-down menu the interviewer who should now be responsible for the interview in the Interviewer Name text box. Press OK to confirm. 2. To change the allocation of an interview that has already been synchronized to the interviewer's tablet, select the interview and then select the interviewer. After that, check the checkbox to confirm that you agree to reassign the interview even though it has already been received by the interviewer. Confirm by pressing the OK button. It is important to note that any data collected for this interview by the previous interviewer will be lost. 3. To reassign an interview with the status of completed or rejected by headquarters, select the interview you want to reassign and then reject this interview by pressing the red Reject button on the toolbar. The supervisor can then reassign the interview to another interviewer. In this case, all collected information will be saved. Another similar scenario where this protocol should be applied is when the first interviewer has already created an interview from the assignment and needs a second interviewer to finish it. The interviewer should mark this interview as completed, even though it's only partially completed, and then synchronize it to the server. Then the interviewer should let the supervisor know so that they can reject it to another interviewer. In this case, the data that was already collected will be in the interview when the other interviewer receives it on the tablet. In the next video, the last part of the Supervisor Training Series, we'll explain how you can evaluate the progress and manage your survey team with the Supervisor application. For more information, please visit our support site.